We're gonna turn this fruit into a chocolate bar completely from scratch. It all starts with this weird looking fruit called a cacao pod, and they're actually really fun to open, but first I'm gonna need a little space. The first time I ever visited a cacao farm in Ecuador, they taught me how to karate chop the pods open, like this. And that reminds me, you may be wondering how I know how to make chocolate. Aside from making it at least 10 other times in different videos all across the internet, I also hold the Guinness World Record for the world's largest chocolate bar, which was the size of a basketball court. As you can see, this pod is filled with beans, and each of those beans is coated in a white pulp. That pulp on the outside is a delicious fruit. Some people say it tastes a bit like a tropical lemonade, a little lychee, a little mango, but what we're here for is what's inside. But not before we go through a multi-step process that starts with fermenting the beans. But why don't we just fast forward through getting all of our beans. I wish some of you watching were here to help me with this because I'm making a lot of chocolate right now and the karate chopping is starting to really hurt my hands. Once we've got all of our beans, and I know right now they might look like gooey alien eggs, but I promise they'll be chocolate bars soon, we'll ferment them by layering a wooden bucket with some banana leaves. If you can't already tell, I'm trying to do this exactly the way I've seen it done in Ecuador. And once they've been piled all the way up the sides, we'll add in all of our fresh cacao beans, making sure to spread them out evenly as we go. We do this fermentation process because raw cacao beans taste nothing like chocolate, so they need to ferment to develop that chocolate flavor before we do anything else. Once they're all covered up, let them ferment for 5 to 7 days, but with the power of movie magic, you don't have to wait. It smells like a mixture of kind of grape juice and vinegar and red wine. Let's see. Whoa. I know I said I've made chocolate so many times, but I still get excited every time. Even though just from the smell, I am highly confident these are fermented, there is one simple test to tell if it's truly fermented, which is to cut one open and see if that purple bean we saw earlier is now brown. Since these passed the test, it means it's time for them to go into the dehydrator. Normally, since chocolate is made in warm climates, these cacao beans would be dried outside in the sun in these huge open areas, but I only have a kitchen, so a dehydrator is the best way for me to get a consistent warm temperature. Once they're all on trays, we'll load them into the dehydrator and dry them until almost all the moisture is gone. And when they finish drying, all that white fruit will be completely gone and they look very different. Even just listen to the sound of these. We're getting closer and closer to that chocolate bar, but first we want to look carefully through all our dried beans to sort through anything that shouldn't be there. And for the first time, things are about to smell a lot like chocolate. First, we're going to fill up the drum with all of our dried beans, and once it's in, we'll secure it in place and start our machine, which I'm going to keep open at the start so you can see how it works. As they roast, they'll constantly spin around so that every bean is cooked evenly. And as this happens, the whole room starts to smell more and more like chocolate. Once they've roasted and things have cooled down, we'll pour our beans onto a flat work surface, and now we'll do what's called winnowing, also known as taking off the shells. Listen carefully because the sounds here are very satisfying. There are many different methods of peeling off these shells, and when people first started making chocolate, they had to peel every single bean by hand. But nowadays, there are giant machines that make all of this very quick and easy. If you look closely at this one here, you can see what it looks like on the inside of the shell. This is exactly what I've always imagined dinosaur eggs used to look like. And when you crush it between your fingers, it turns into cacao nibs, which might be the first thing from this video you actually recognize. Once we've crushed as many of the beans as we can, use a hairdryer to push out all the inedible shells for you. This will make an incredibly large mess in your kitchen, and if this wasn't my job, I probably wouldn't be doing this right now. As it turns out, partway through doing this, I think I invented a new method that's even faster, but also messier. But the important thing is it worked, because we're left here with perfect cacao nibs and no shell. I think I may also have a good way to clean off the counter. If you can't tell, I really just want a chocolate bar. The next step is to make what's called a chocolate liqueur. The non-fancy way to say this is that we're starting out the process of blending these cacao nibs into what will eventually be a liquid chocolate. Sort of like turning peanuts into peanut butter, this may not look like it'll blend into a paste, but give it some high power and a little bit of time, and it eventually will. Once it eventually becomes a soft and shiny paste, with all of that shine being the cocoa butter that's being released as it blends, we're separately now gonna blend our sugar. We're gonna blend this right now until it's light and powdery and has the same texture as powdered sugar. All of our steps right now are prepping our ingredients to go into the really cool stone grinder we're gonna be using in just a few moments. We wouldn't wanna buy the powdered sugar from the market for this because it has other things in there. The same reason I never buy pre-grated cheese. Once we have our our powdered sugar and our chocolate liqueur, it's time to bring in one of my all-time favorite machines. Before we put anything in, I'm going to show you how this machine works. As you can see, the bowl spins one way while two big stone wheels both spin the other. First, we'll add the chocolate liqueur and let this run until it's completely liquefied and silky smooth, which took me about 20 minutes. Then we'll add in our powdered sugar as well as some cocoa butter. Fun fact about cocoa butter, it's combined with sugar to make white chocolate. Lots of people have no idea where white chocolate comes from, and now you know. At this point in the process, I'm also going to scrape down the sides of my bowl to make sure everything is fully combined, even on the stones themselves, to make sure nothing gets stuck. This is going to grind now for 72 hours, but I'm not going to make you wait, so let's just fast forward. This has literally been running in my kitchen for 72 hours. You can see all the splatter up the sides, and you can also see that chocolate is incredibly silky smooth. Quick taste. I'm making a 70% dark chocolate bar, so I'm not gonna add any more sugar or milk. I'm just gonna wait to describe this to you until we have a finished bar. How's that? The final step before putting it into our chocolate bar mold is called tempering. Tempering is what gives chocolate its shiny look and that iconic snap when you break it. If we skipped this step, we'd get dull, waxy chocolate that would crumble in your hand. We're using marble for this because it stays naturally cold, sort of like how we want to use a heavy-bottomed cast iron when we cook a steak because it distributes heat so evenly and stays nice and hot. This is probably the hardest part about the chocolate making process, and when making this video, I had to do it twice to get it right. You'll notice I'm constantly checking the temperature because we have to first cool it to between 80 and 82 degrees Fahrenheit and then heat it back up to somewhere between 88 and 90 degrees Fahrenheit. I know it doesn't seem to make much sense, but like most cooking, it really just comes down to science. Our homemade chocolate is perfectly tempered, which means it's time to put it into the molds. I have to say, I'm feeling a little bit like Willy Wonka right now. As a final step, to remove any air bubbles and to make sure all the chocolate gets to the bottom of the mold, I'm going to tap it down in every different direction, and now we'll let this rest for 20 to 30 minutes at room temperature until finally, I'm so happy I can say this, we've got chocolate. First, quick snap test. That's it. Now the bite. Oh yeah. I told you earlier I described the flavor, so here it is. This homemade bar tastes like the most chocolatey chocolate I've ever had. Kind of like getting a tomato out of your garden instead of the grocery store. I don't know what to say other than that the recipe worked perfectly, even though I expect absolutely none of you to make this at home. Guess I gotta clean up the floor now, huh?